Most people think hypothermia is dramatic. They picture blizzards, they picture whiteouts and snowstorms. They picture someone collapsing in the wilderness. That picture is wrong. Hypothermia is quiet. It is slow, and it kills people who think they're still functioning. This is how hypothermia actually kills. Not in extreme conditions, but in everyday environments, in cars, and at home. Hypothermia doesn't start with cold. It starts with neurologic degradation. By the time someone says, "I think I'm getting hypothermic," the shutdown sequence has already begun. This isn't about comfort. It's not about camping gear. It's not about survival fantasy. This is about hypothermia prevention at home and hypothermia in cars, because that's where most people actually die. As a combat medic in Afghanistan, I didn't learn hypothermia from a book. I treated the consequences. I treated frostbite, not the mild kind, but deep tissue injury where circulation was already failing. I treated tissue necrosis, where the skin was dead but still attached, and the patient didn't fully understand what had happened yet. I've seen the tips of toes freeze solid and later separate from the body. Not dramatically, not immediately, but days later, quietly. As a combat medic, I've also had to debride necrotic tissue caused by cold injury. That means removing tissue that didn't survive, not because of trauma, not because of a blast, but because circulation failed quietly over time. In those moments, you're not fixing an injury. You're hoping enough viable tissue remains to save function. And sometimes it doesn't. I'm not sharing this to shock you. I'm sharing it so you never have to see it. That kind of damage doesn't come from recklessness. It comes from people staying cold just a little too long, believing they were still okay. Once tissue crosses that line, there is no reversing it. There is only loss, and the hope that prevention came early enough elsewhere. And here's what matters. Those injuries didn't happen because people were careless. They happened because hypothermia shut the brain down first. Pain perception was blunted. Judgment was impaired. Danger didn't feel urgent. People kept moving when they should have stopped. They waited when they should have acted. They told themselves they were fine, until they weren't. This is the point where hypothermia stops being reversible. By the time we saw them, the damage was already permanent. That's why this isn't a story about mountains or expeditions or war zones. The same failure sequence happens every winter in stalled vehicles, unheated homes, and suburban neighborhoods. Hypothermia doesn't care where you are. And once tissue is dead, there is no reversing it. Once circulation is gone, there is no shortcut back. Once judgment is impaired, people stop saving themselves. That's why prevention matters more than treatment. That's why winter emergency preparedness has to start early, not when it feels cold. To understand how to prevent hypothermia, you have to understand how the body fails before it feels cold. Hypothermia is usually defined as a low core body temperature. That definition misses the real danger. Clinically, hypothermia is progressive system failure. The brain goes first, then the muscles, then the heart. Judgment fails before strength. Coordination fails before pain. Decision-making fails before awareness. That's why hypothermia victims don't panic. They act confidently wrong. They make calm, fatal decisions while believing they're still fine. Ask yourself, would you recognize that happening to you? In medicine and rescue, we watch for what are called the umbles. Stumbles, clumsy walking, loss of balance. Mumbles, slow, slurred, incomplete speech. Fumbles, trouble with zippers, phones, keys, gloves. Grumbles, irritability, confusion, poor decisions. These are classic hypothermia signs and symptoms. The umbles are not early warning signs. They are late-stage indicators. By the time they appear, the brain is already cold enough to malfunction. This is where people think they still have time, and don't. That's why gear has to be staged early and used early. Now let's talk about vehicles, because hypothermia in cars is one of the most misunderstood risks in cold weather emergencies. Most people imagine vehicle hypothermia deaths happening in remote wilderness. They don't. They happen on side roads, in parking lots, during short commutes, minutes from home. The car stops moving, and the body immediately starts losing. Once mobility is gone, heat production drops. Wind strips warmth through glass and metal. Moisture builds from breath and melting snow. Judgment deteriorates minute by minute. A disabled vehicle is not shelter. It's a metal heat sink with windows. This is where winter vehicle preparedness saves lives. The most important cold weather gear in a vehicle is the gear that prevents you from being stranded at all. Cold destroys batteries. Voltage drops. Chemical reactions slow. If your car won't start, you're instantly in a cold exposure scenario. Fuel matters too. A low tank in winter removes options. Fuel equals optional heat, optional movement, and optional time. This is how hypothermia prevention in cars actually works. Upstream. Prevention extras matter. A portable jump starter keeps vehicles moving and phones charged. Tire chains or quick-deploy snow socks prevent immobilization. High-calorie energy bars provide fuel for heat production. Emergency whistles and signal mirrors allow low-effort calls for help when energy is limited. Once prevention fails, heat retention becomes the priority. Flat space blankets reflect heat, but they don't trap air. Without trapped air, convection strips warmth away immediately. A bivy-style emergency bag traps a layer of warm air around the body. It blocks airflow. It slows convective heat loss. It doesn't feel comfortable. It feels restrictive. But it slows the neurologic decline that leads to confusion and collapse. Insulation matters just as much. Cold environments are always wet environments. Snow melts. Sweat builds. Condensation forms. Cotton absorbs water and collapses. Once wet, it accelerates heat loss. Wool behaves differently. Wool traps air even when damp. It slows evaporative cooling. It continues insulating as conditions degrade. That's why wool socks, wool blankets, and wool base layers matter. Spare dry socks matter more than spare gloves. Cold feet accelerate total heat loss faster than most people realize. Chemical hand warmers are not comfort items. They preserve dexterity. Dexterity preserves decision-making. Insulated seat covers and blankets trap body heat during long waits. Rechargeable headlamps allow visibility without wasting phone batteries or creating stress. In vehicles, hypothermia kills through immobility, wind, and time. Your goal is not comfort. Your goal is time. Now let's talk about hypothermia prevention at home, where most fatal mistakes actually happen. Most hypothermia deaths happen indoors, not outside, at home, because cold indoors doesn't feel urgent. When the power goes out, temperature drops slowly. People normalize discomfort. They delay action. This is where families get caught off guard. That's when bad decisions stack up. Trying to heat an entire house during a power outage is a losing strategy. It wastes fuel, it accelerates depletion, it increases risk. This is where two tools matter more than almost anything else. First, a safe, controlled heat source. Portable heaters, like a heater buddy, can provide localized warmth when used correctly. They are not fireplaces. They are not permanent heating systems. They are temporary physiologic support, designed to keep core temperature stable, not make the house comfortable. Any combustion heat indoors introduces a silent threat: carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide has no smell. It causes headache, confusion, fatigue, and sleepiness. It mimics hypothermia almost perfectly. People don't recognize poisoning. They lie down, they fall asleep, they don't wake up. A carbon monoxide detector is not optional. It is life support equipment. Skipping it trades cold exposure for poisoning. The second critical tool is an indoor tent. This is one of the most effective hypothermia prevention strategies people ignore. Don't heat the house. Heat the microclimate. An indoor tent inside a room traps body heat, reduces air volume, and magnifies limited heat sources. Smaller space means less heat required. Less heat required means less fuel burned. Less fuel burned means less risk. Inside that tent, sleeping bags rated for cold weather matter. Foam sleeping pads matter because cold floors pull heat through conduction. Layered clothing matters because trapped air is insulation. Warm drinks support metabolism. Calories matter because cold burns energy faster than people expect. Draft stoppers and window insulation reduce heat loss. Battery-powered heated blankets provide targeted warmth. Merino wool balaclavas and neck gaiters protect high-loss areas. Insulated boots with removable liners reduce exposure during short outdoor needs. At home, hypothermia kills through gradual energy depletion, confusion, unsafe heat choices, and delayed recognition. People don't panic. They say, "I'll deal with it later. I'll just rest. It's not that bad." This is where hypothermia becomes deadly in homes. That's when the shutdown curve steepens. Gear without understanding gets ignored. Gear without timing gets misused. Hypothermia prevention happens before coordination fails, before judgment slips, before fatigue sets in. Once the brain goes offline, survival becomes accidental. Quick myths matter. Alcohol does not warm you up. It dilates blood vessels and accelerates heat loss. Rubbing frostbitten areas does not help. It causes more tissue damage. Vulnerable groups matter. Older adults lose heat faster and recognize it later. People with diabetes or circulation problems deteriorate earlier. Children often get quiet instead of complaining. Real-world examples matter. In the United States, hypothermia contributes to thousands of deaths each year, many occurring in mild temperatures, indoors, or near help. The Texas power outage caused hundreds of deaths, most from hypothermia indoors. The Buffalo blizzard killed dozens, many in cars or homes without heat. Cold doesn't kill fast. It kills quietly. It convinces people they're fine, right up until they aren't. If your plan begins when you feel cold, your plan begins too late. If you remember nothing else, hypothermia shuts down judgment first. Children go quiet, and homes feel safe until they aren't. Learn the failure sequence. Stage the right cold weather gear early. Reduce risk upstream. Stay ahead of the shutdown curve. This is survival. This is resilience. This is Suburban Prepper.